Welcome. I'm gonna show for myself right now, so please like, comment, subscribe, become a member if you want to support the channel. And let's begin. Today we'll be talking about the best spec if you want to play a Paladin and Wrath of the Lich King Classic. I'll start off with the most important part, and that's the tanking spec, the Protection Paladin. I've already done a video where I ranked all the tanks, and spoiler alert I guess, Protection Paladins are the best tanks in Wrath of the Lich King. They have a lot of utility, they're very good tanks, they work exceptionally well in all raids, and they are the perfect class for their job. If you want to listen to more and hear why Protection Paladins are so good when it comes to tanking, well, you can check my video about the tanking tier list, and that will be in an info card somewhere. Next, let's go to Retribution Paladin, which is one of the more interesting specs, because you see, Retribution Paladins used to be considered a weak spec in the original Burning Crusade, though that ended up not being the case in the Burning Crusade Classic. Blizzard reworked them dramatically in Wrath of the Lich King, and for a short period afterwards, Ret was wildly overpowered. Blizzard quickly brought the nerf hammer upon this specialization, and as a result, we are now, well, as Retribution Paladins, average, to say the least. And when it comes to a more DPS tier list thing, I think it's best to consider Retribution Paladins to be more on the B spot, middle of the road, if you will. Retribution have single target damage that is a little bit, underwhelming, if we're gonna be honest, typically being the middle of the flock. However, the new ability Divine Storm pushes the cleave damage a little bit higher. It makes the cleave damage of the Retribution Paladin bigger, because that ability alone is very strong. However, the majority of Phase 1 boss fights are primarily single targets, with exceptions such as Nubrekan and so on. So, as a Retribution Paladin, you don't really get to take advantage of this strength as much as you would like. But what Retribution Paladins may lack in single target damage, it more than makes up for having arguably the most useful raid buff and debuff of any spec in the game. Of course, we are talking about the Paladin staples, the Blessings. But there are many Retribution exclusive goodies, and that consists of Judgment of the Wise, Heart of the Crusader, Sanctified Retribution, and Swift Retribution. They have so much utility that nearly every raid will bring a Ret Paladin, and some will bring up more. If you're a fan of the Paladin class, but feel disappointed by the lower ranking of Retribution Paladins and how really they're not really top of the DPS meters, this class is more of a late boomer, sort of in the same sense as the Fire Mage. While the damage is just about average in the first 3 phases of the game, in Phase 4, the Retribution Paladins become monsters when it comes to cleave damage, and that's thanks to the ever-present Shadowmourne, and of course the overpowered Rune Totem's Battle Gear 2-piece bonus. Retribution Paladins will very commonly be near the top of the damage meter in Phase 4. So you could see your Ret as a long-term investment. You put now and you'll get something at the end of it. Kind of like a bank, but less, sharky. Let's go to the other beautiful Paladin spec, and that is the Holy Paladin. And let me tell you this. Holy Paladins are S tier when it comes to healing. Holy Paladins are overpowered in Wrath of the Lich King. You have new monstrous abilities like a Beacon of Light and Sacred Shield. Beacon of Light causes the target to become a Beacon of Light, so any heals you cast will also heal the Beacon of the Light target. Double healing all the way. Now it's a good idea to have. Holy Paladins are also an enormous beneficiary of the glyph system. Glyph of the Holy Light, for example, gives 5 friendly targets 10% of your Holy Light heals. Also, don't forget that Divine Plea gives you 25% of your total mana back. At the cost of a reduced healing, you'll also have no mana issues whatsoever. Finally, you get improvements to all sort of spells like Holy Shock, which has a 7.5 cooldown seconds, whatever. Lay on Hands reduces physical damage by 20% for 15 seconds. Basically, as a Holy Paladin, you will be the best tank healer and the most viable raid healer at the same time. Moreover, the skill for Holy Paladins is really high though. Because remember, this is the best Wrath of the Lich King healing class. And as I said, they're the best class, they're the S tier when it comes to healing. There just isn't as much massive AoE damage in these fights as there were in TBC. The Holy Paladin will benefit even more from whatever abilities they can use at the same time, and they're very good for what they do. So, let's go on now. We've reached 6 minutes, that's very good. And now that I've exposed you to all these beautiful things that the Paladin class can do, which is the best spec that you could play? Which would be recommended? And you know, it's funny to say this to a class that can be both DPS healer and tank, because honestly, you can be all of them. The best spec for this class is whichever the one you decide on. It's the best one. It's the best class of the whole game, in fact. And the fact that you have 3 specs, 2 of which are S tier and one that is, you know, middle of the pack but gets better in the late stages of Wrath of the Lich King, is an added bonus. If you want a DPS and you want to play a Paladin, go for it. If you want to heal, best spec out there. If you want a tank, best spec out there. There is literally no class that is better for Wrath of the Lich King than the Paladin. And lore-wise, this makes sense since we're going to the home of the Lich King, of artists who will used to be a Paladin. The fact that Paladins are so strong in this expansion, well, is also a lore statement of Warcraft's story. And honestly, I would go for a tank if you really want to be the center of attention, but also going for Holy is pretty good. And if you can get your hands on Shadowmourne, the more the better. Pick whichever one you want. You'll never go wrong with the Paladin.